Hello, I'm Senior Programmer Jenn Wilson, and welcome to this Film Independent Presents Vision Festival Visions Edition Q&A. Special thanks to our virtual screenings partner, Vision Media. Today, we're spotlighting the feature film, Everything You Have Is Yours by Tatyana Tenenbaum. With us today to moderate the Q&A is Cucaloris Film Festival's very own Executive Director, Dan Brawley. Welcome, Dan, and take it away.
Thanks, Jen. Glad to be here with you all for this discussion about Everything You Have Is Yours. I am delighted to be joined by three of the folks who were integral to making this film come to life. Tatyana, Hadar, and Brighid are all here with me. So if y'all want to jump on. All right, thanks for joining us. And let's just get started. I'll let you all introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about what role you played in the project. Hadar, we sort of have an idea of what role you played, but give us an idea of what it was like for you and maybe how you met Tatyana. Um, so let's start with you, Tatyana, since you directed the film, and tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how this project got started.
Thanks, Dan. My name is Tatyana Tenenbaum. I'm the director of this film, and I've known Hadar for over a decade now. We are both dancers, dance makers, performers, and I also have a practice filming artist process and creating artist profiles for institutions. And I started this film in 2017. I think we started filming without really an agenda that this would become a feature film. I was really thinking a lot about my own Jewishness and my own whiteness and relationship to American empire and white supremacy. And I was looking for folks in my community who were doing work with their lineages. And of course, I was drawn to Hadar. We have shared Ashkenazi Jewish lineage. Our ancestors migrated to separate continents and became part of different state building projects, national projects. So we were thinking a lot about mythologies and how we hold them in our bodies. And I asked Hadar if I could film a little bit of her process. I kept filming, and a year passed, 2 years passed, and a pandemic happened. And 7 years later, this film came to life with the support of many people, many people, including Brighid, the film's producer, and in conversation with Hadar and many of the artists featured in the film.
So, Brighid, you want to tell us about your role and how did you and Tatyana get linked together?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Brighid Greene, film's producer. Tatyana and I actually connected in the lobby of a performance of Hadar's in December 2019. And Tatyana shared with me that she was working on this film, that it had kind of turned into a feature film, and she had just participated in DCTV's docu Work in Progress Lab, run by Dara Messenger, who's a friend and collaborator of mine. So we sort of had all of this interlap, and of course there was synergy because we were at one of Hadar's shows. And then that was December 2019, and then Tatyana had started participating in IFP Lab, now the Gotham Lab, in the spring of 2020. Of course, this is also during the pandemic, and they basically in the lab were like, maybe you need a producer. And Tatyana remembered running into me and reached out, and we had always been kind of like overlapping in the dance world. I'm also a dancer. Tatyana is a dancer, choreographer, and Hadar and I actually danced together in one of our first like professional pieces together, right when we graduated from college in 2011 or something like that. So there's like a long history of all of us sort of being in the same spaces together. And Tatyana asked if I was interested, and I said, yes, absolutely. I was really excited to work on something that was political, and was about dance. But
So, Hadar, tell us a little bit about it. We're going to talk to you a lot. I mean, I feel like we all just spent a lot of time hanging out with you. Um, what was that like? I mean, it's a very personal film, and your creative process is just on the screen and raw. Can you talk about the first part of that and why maybe you agreed to let us all into such a deep part of who you are?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks to the festival for having us. Yeah, this really like emerged out of my friendship with Tatyana, and I I agreed because I thought what Tatyana wanted to do. I mean, early on when it was going to be like a 5-minute video, I was like, this is great. That residency that some people get, where they get to get these videos made by you that are really beautiful. I would love to have one of those. That would be really helpful. Um, and I think I also felt a little like lonely in the dance world at that moment of like being so forward about my Jewishness. And so I appreciated that Tatyana was interested in that and wanted to support me in doing that. Like I felt like kind of a vote of confidence of her saying like, I think what you're doing is important. And in a way like that like her witness became a really integral part of my process. She came into like pretty early on into the making of some of these works. And oftentimes when I was speaking to her on camera, I would speak to her as a friend, as another choreographer, as another person who understood what the dance making process was like. And I think to sort of like trick myself into just like being on camera, I would just think about, oh, I'm just talking to my friend Tatyana. There are some things that I would maybe say differently if I was thinking that I was talking to a cinema full of people, but that's not what I was imagining yet would happen. And over time, as that shifted, I'm really, really like proud of the ways that Tatyana and I kept communicating about like our boundaries around that, and our friendship is very complex. Like we have many different ways that we support each other and overlap in our practices. So I just want to lift that up, that like the power of collaboration is really like deep in this film. And yeah, and I was moved to make this work about my heritage, my family's history, because we have been for the last 10 years, and now even more, in a really urgent, dire moment for Palestinians. And I wanted to understand what I could do as a dance artist to use my voice, to use the privilege that I have as a white Ashkenazi person with a particular history and relationship to the state, who I could speak to, who would maybe be able to hear me, that wouldn't be able to hear some of the Palestinians that I've met with. And yeah, to try to use my voice to move people in their direction and to listening to them. And in a way, Tatyana was able to do that in a way that I couldn't do in my own dance pieces. I could allude from my perspective to their absence, but as a filmmaker, Tatyana could allow them to have their own voices, speak directly to you. So I felt, as the film grew, it felt that it could do more than what even my dance works had begun to do, and that actually we were like in a shared project around doing that, and that we could support each other.
You're touching on something that I'm really curious about. And Tatyana, all three of you can sort of can answer to this, but I'm curious as to how much footage you were watching along the way, and and what that dialogue was like. Definitely curious, Hadar, if there were any times you were like, "Whoa, you can't show that. That's too much," or what was that exchange like? Because 10 years is a long time, or 7 years, 8 years. Talk about the evolution of that collaboration. And, Tatyana, maybe you could start by just telling us what your approach was, kind of how you viewed Hadar as a collaborator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Hadar had a lot of restraint. I'll let her talk about it. She knows herself very well, and actually we tried to figure out what felt right, but she chose to actually not see too much along the way at a certain point. I think she wanted to see it more fully formed. And I really am grateful. You can talk more about how that developed. But I will say the film is kind of like an onion, and the sort of core of the film documenting Hadar's work really was in a 2-year span, 2.5, 2 to 3 year span of creative practice. She made these 2 works back to back, Everything You Have Is Yours with a question mark, and The Dances Are For Us, which you see at the end of the film. And though that was 2018, 2019, those works. So I had a kind of backbone of storytelling through dance that very early on I had really strong instincts around how I wanted to let the dance center the storytelling and scaffold and really like tell a story through dance primarily. And then we slowly built out over the years that followed with more conversation, more interview. Of course, we had behind the scenes footage the entire time, but it was kind of like unraveling. Hadar was alluding to a lot of complex webs of relationships in her family, and we would sort of like slowly unravel those over time. And then there was sort of a passing, sort of winding down of filming her and sort of moving towards filming some of the other artists that are featured in the film, and then really working to blend those. And then really towards the end of the process, we had just some gaps that needed to be filled in, and did a kind of culminating audio interview, which was our one of our editors, Colin Nussbaum's ideas. And it really kind of rounded everything out. I think we were sitting close together on Hadar's couch. I remember like the sound of her voice was really dropped in her body, and there was a tenderness. So we kind of revisited a lot of the plot points in that moment, and you can sort of feel all these different like feeling tones and sort of embodied relationships to the content throughout as we like layer over time Hadar's growth and ways of relating to her story, which I think is just part of the power of what a documentary like this does, is like give someone agency to kind of rethink and retell their story.
Hadar, do you want to talk about sort of some of the choices you made in that regard? Like, it sounds like at some point you didn't want to look at footage. And maybe also, can you tell us how this might have impacted sort of the trajectory of the work you were doing, and if it informed at all some of the choices that you made?
Yeah. There were many points where the project itself felt like too hard. I mean, I think as artists working about any subject matter, there are moments in the process where you want to give up on it. And there are ways in which the accountability to Tatyana and this project, even when it was just going to be like a half-hour short film, I felt accountable to her. I felt accountable to our friendship, and to and just like knowing that it felt important enough to this person to document it felt like, okay, well maybe it matters that I make this work, and how do I keep centering myself in a way that's responsible, and I think that was part of why I didn't want to watch the footage, and I wanted to trust Tatyana to make it. And I think also like when Brighid came on board, I was like, oh, this is really happening. Like there was always kind of a question, like, we're artists, we're projects, we have lots of projects going all the time. And I was like, sure, you can be there. It's helping me out. It's like, it's giving us space to build our relationship. Who knows where it's going to go? And I'm really grateful for like the mystery of not knowing at the onset where it was going to go. And yes, I would say like the accountability was a big thing that shifted, and my work really changed after the pieces that I did that are documented in the film. And so there was like a process of detachment, of allowing like these works to speak for where I was at that time, where I was in my emotional process, my political process, and trusting that that's valuable. I wanted to collaborate with an artist based in Jaffa, and I felt really changed after that experience. And so I was really grateful I had opportunity to come back and kind of narrate from a different place.
What was it like the first time you watched it?
Um, it was challenging. You know, I invited my partner to come watch it with me, and I did several viewings where I brought people in to watch it with me. Yeah, you know, I'm a very self-critical person, and part of like what I love is that I didn't have control over this, and that it's not my film, and I trust Tatyana as another eye to see things that I can't see, um, and you know, it's like I'm constantly editing things until the last minute in my performances, and so like I had to stop. I didn't get to edit this film, you know, 2 years before it went out into the public was the last time I got to kind of have an input into it, and it's been really powerful to release that and to trust. Part of what I think is important about this film is to show change and to show vulnerability, to show process. I didn't come out of the bag like fully formed with my political ideas. And yeah, so it's like very humbling to be able to share that. And I hope like useful, you know, I hope people see themselves in it. And I've also kind of like releasing into like, you know, I talk a lot in my work about all the projection that's happening between choreographers and subjects, you know, Palestinian, Arabs. And I feel like, okay, now I'm giving people a chance to project onto me, wherever they are in their process, wherever they're coming from. It's a useful way to move this conversation forward.
Brighid, can you talk about some of the challenges, or can you talk about your collaboration as a dancer and a dance maker becoming a producer? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I did also want to add that, like, in this process, like, Tatyana, giving a shout out to Tatyana's, like, relationship building, and we did have a process of, like, sharing the film with everybody that was in the film, and, like, we modeled a release form that wasn't just, like, the people in the film giving away all their rights, but was also, like, what we were accountable to in the relationship. So that was, like, something that was really important to us, and kind of, like, that we built into our timeline, was like sharing the film with everybody that was a part of it throughout the filmmaking process, which I think, you know, and also like a shout out to Jordan Lord. They've also created like a kind of a release form that we looked at. And so, yeah, just thinking about what accountability means in documentary filmmaking. And that was really important to us. And I guess that kind of relates to this like experience of becoming like a filmmaker from being a dancer, or just kind of trying to like steward some of the things that we've learned in like dance making community um about caring for people, and you know, not that the dance making community is also perfect in that way, that there's lots of gaps as well, but trying to make something in a collaborative way, in a way that responds, I think, in real time, and really knowing that there's a lot of change that's happening also behind the scenes that doesn't make its way to camera necessarily, and that is just as important as it makes its way to the camera. I feel like that's been sort of a guiding principles of ours as well. And like dance really permeated this film and a lot of the decision making, in terms of how we were editing the film, or, you know, choices that we were making about ways to tell this story, ways to like use visuals and movement as another form of language. And a goal being for this film to be something that can be embodied, and you know, in some way honoring Hadar's vulnerability in that way, so that it's not necessarily didactic, but it's something that you can hopefully really experience as you're watching it. And I mean, Dan, you've said this actually so eloquently about the film, and that's, you know, that was sort of our goal, is like really wanting people to be able to have an embodied experience. And hopefully that's a way that we can kind of help to instigate, or almost like prepare people for change, especially when it's so in such a politically and fraught time. Is like, how do we sort of allow the body and allow people and to be ready to receive and to change.
Yeah, beautiful. Tatyana, can you talk a little bit about how being a dance maker, a dancer, influences your work? Maybe expand a little bit on what Brighid has touched on. And, for those of us in the audience who aren't dancers and don't spend a lot of time in the dance studio,
Yeah.
maybe give us a little window into what that means.
Yeah, I think it means honoring dance as a mode of communication in and of itself. My sort of long tripping over my words, decade plus of dance documentation, where I have a practice of entering a room and really, sometimes in like a residency documentation context, really having to at the same time disappear, like not impose myself in the space, but also understand how a person is using space. And really try to convey that point of view. So I think what it means for me is I have a lineage training as an improviser. I've done a lot of contact improvisation, which is a weight sharing, energetic form. And so I really feel like my relationship to people's center of gravity, where they are looking how large is the space, how much intimacy does it need, and really like in both in an interview context and also when I'm witnessing people's work, to really capture that with the camera. And I feel like my process of filming, especially in those early years, like I was completely melded with this camera and it was part of my body. And I'm just like some of the early and like most stunning material, I still like I marvel at my memory of doing it because I wasn't thinking, I wasn't planning, and I just was picking up the camera and plopping it down and like not fussing. It was an improvisation, and I think that is coming from my dance practice, and my personality, and also just used to working collaboratively and have like a deep history of that. Um, yeah, so those are some of the ways. Oh, yeah, I think your microphone got turned off.
It did. There was a fire truck. So I think I want to wrap with the thing we haven't touched on, which is the politics of this movie. And, one of the things that I think is so beautiful is that this is a personal window into some issues that are really hard they're hard on your body, right? And I think that's one of the beauties. But so if each of you could just touch on, I don't know, maybe the challenge of making a film like this that seems to cross a lot of different boundaries where people are stuck. And also maybe what you want people to take away from watching this movie. Yeah, I'll let whoever feels ready to like dive into that one. Do I need to pick somebody? Brighid, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you want people to take away from this film, and um, maybe how witnessing Hadar's work might have influenced your understanding or your like processing of some of this trauma that we're all consuming, in a way.
I mean, yesterday we had or not yesterday, the other day we had a screening, and someone asked sort of a similar question, or about like, yeah, what audiences' experiences have been with the film. And I think as I kind of formulated and was thinking about it, it really dawned on me that there's been a lot of different people who have like across the political spectrum and across cultural spectrum who we've shared the film with, and that it can resonate with people from many different points, and many different sort of entry points. And I think, that was sort of the goal in making something that was so sort of layered, is like being able for people to like have an entry point in different ways. So that's been really rewarding, and really that's something that I'm really grateful for the film to be able to do. Um, and I mean, in my own, even making this film, I learned so much about what's happening in Palestine, more than I ever knew, and continue to learn a lot. And specifically, I learned about my own heritage and the Irish solidarity with Palestine. And I think that learning process is ongoing. And I feel like that's something that feels very important to me is that we continue to believe in our capacity to learn something new that might challenge what we've thought previously, and that that's okay. And so I think that as a general idea is really, really important to me in this making of this film. And I hope audiences know that they are capable of learning and of changing their minds.
I can go next, unless you want to go, Hadar. I thought about this question since Dan and I spoke yesterday. And what I want to say is that I think Hadar models this really beautifully in the film, and I've been learning alongside for years that intergenerational change that takes time. We are living always, but especially now in as a result of so many colonial processes, structures of oppression. They're huge and they're really tightly knit, and they live in generations and generations of bodies, and they affect us in all of these complex ways. And I think just we normally start the screening with a sort of grounding where I ask people to kind of settle into their spines and to sense into the past several generations back, and then sense into the future several generations forward, and actually bring people from those generations into the room with us. And I think it's really important to have that humility at the same time as we have urgency to stop, genocide, to stop harm that does not need to be happening, and also to hold that humility and to try not to reenact annihilation on ourselves, whether that's cultural annihilation or breaking in our families, even if we have disagreements. I think that really tricky and sticky work that I was privileged and honored to be, alongside Hadar as she navigated that. That's the really hard work, and how can we extend that generosity to each other in a political context where people really want to shut people down, and it's very tempting. But we're not going to really make progress if we don't have that kindness for ourselves. So that's what I hope people take away.
Hadar, I'll let you close us out. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to second everything that Tatyana just said. Yeah, I think I want to help people remember what were the places that touched them or agitated them in the film, and to tend to those places. That we have to do the work of our own healing at the same time that we do the very urgent work of supporting Palestinians. And they're two different kinds of work, and they're both really necessary. And it's like doing cross training in dance, right? We do one kind of practice one day, but we also have to do cardiovascular training. So call your representatives, tell them to stop supporting Israel, starving Gazans, tell them to stop supporting Israel, bombing Palestinians, and tend to what that brings up for you, why you might feel scared about doing that, and honoring the feelings that might bring up. These are both physical practices, right? Picking up the phone, the resistance that comes up. There's something that's happening in our body that makes us able or willing or unable to do that. And yeah, I hope the film has given some spaciousness for the place that it has felt tight, and that you're able to talk to the people in your life and to reach for connection, even when it feels really difficult in this moment. It's not as difficult as what Palestinians are experiencing, and we owe them to try.
Beautiful. I almost cried when you said call your senator. I didn't think that was the moment I was going to cry today. I don't know why, but thank you for making that emotional, which it should be, because it's important. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Tatyana, Hadar, Brighid. I know this conversation will continue in your car and in the lobby or wherever else you're going to be. So thanks again for joining us, everybody. For everything you have is yours.
Dan, can we do a little plug for our future for this film?
Please, yes.
I'll let Brighid take it away.
Oh, yes. Well, we are partnering with Kinema, and the film will be available to book and bring to your community. So please visit our website, everythyouhaveisyours.com. There's a form you can fill out if you're interested in booking a film. And yeah, we have a bunch of screenings coming up, and are eager to continue sort of this momentum. And thank you, Dan, for championing this film. You're the first programmer that said yes to this film, and we really owe you so much. And we're very, very, very grateful to be on this journey with you. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.